G'day everyone and welcome to 7 Questions, a podcast that shares the stories and compelling lessons founders, investors and leaders shaping our economy. I'm your host, Wayne Gerard, founder and investor at Partner and co-founder of Create Financial. Through 7 Questions, we explore the founder journey, idea to legacy, uncovering the insights, lessons and defining moments that shaped each founder and the amazing business they built. Whether you're a first-time founder, serial entrepreneur, investor, or someone looking for insights on entrepreneurship and what it takes to build a world-class company, these conversations are designed to inspire you, get you thinking, and hopefully you'll find some timely wisdom that propels your journey. G'day everyone, welcome to 7 Questions. Here we had a fantastic conversation with Scott Murray, the CEO and founder of Aurovian. Scott is a really special guest. He's currently based in London and has been residing there for about a decade. Scott was previously the founder and CEO of Icon, which he grew over a 25-year period, including exiting in 2017 and then staying on for 5 years to integrate the company and complete his earnout. Scott then went on to do some coaching, mentoring and investing in his own right, ultimately joined up with his co-founder and is now the CEO and co-founder of. It's a really compelling conversation. There's stacks of ideas, stacks of takeaways, stacks of things to think about if you're a founder and this is your first journey. We cover a range of topics from recharging after his first startup adventure to moving into MedTech and building a MedTech device that's basically at the forefront of precision and personalised medicine. Really exciting to hear about what Scott's working on and the impact he's having and the potential of that company globally. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Scott Murray. He'll be back in Australia in a couple of weeks' time and would love to connect with people. So if you find this interesting and valuable, please check the show notes out and reach out to Scott. Hi, Scott. Welcome to 7 Questions. It's great to have you here, mate.
Thanks, Wayne. Great to be here.
Awesome. Before we start, let's help people get to know you. So who are you? What experiences and moments have shaped your founder journey?
So my name's Scott Murray. I'm actually based in London these days, but originally I was from Brisbane, Australia. And back then I started a company in 1997. I co-founded a company back then, as I've done now more recently. And I ran that company for 25 years. We grew it out of Brisbane. We went internationally into Asia, into America, into Europe. I eventually moved across to London to grow it over here in Europe. And while I was here, we got offered to buy the company. So we exited and sold it. And I ran it for another 5 years as CEO. So you can imagine over that's a long period of time to be running a company. So I gained a lot of experience as a founder and a CEO, just dealing with keeping the business alive through the tough times. And, you've got to be honest, there were tough times where, especially in the early days where we mightn't have had enough money to pay the bills, or to even pay wages. And so as a founder, you might have to give up your wages and not take them. Or there were times when I would have to just jump on a plane and fly overseas to go see a customer, get a deal done and bring back work to sort of got money that month. And yeah, like a lot of founders, I think, could relate to that because you kind of do what you need to do to get the job done and go through those tough times. But then being able to have an exit and have the success that came with that was really great result for all the people involved because it made it all worthwhile and it showed that you had a valid premise that you're dealing with. But I think being able to run the company for that long, I really sort of came to appreciate sustainability, but not sustainability just from an environmental point of view, but from building a business that's sustainable, building a team of people and the processes and the systems and really making sure you do things the right way so that you don't create a problem for yourself that then you're going to have to deal with eventually anyway. So I think that's sort of what came about for me in developing me as a founder of my first company. And so now I'm come back into a second business and I can apply a lot of those learnings. So hopefully we can make the most of them.
Scott, awesome journey. It is. There are very few founders that I think have had that end-to-end experience where they've started with an idea, they've scaled the company globally, they've moved internationally, they've really built a great business and a great brand and had the opportunity to do a successful exit. When did you actually exit?
Well, we sold the company in 2017, and then I left the business 5 years later, so 2022. So,
after that 5 year, was it an earn out or was it some kind of, what was the obligation there?
Yeah, it was an earn out / integration into the bigger PLC business. And just running it for 5 years and just trying to bed into the company. And
I'm so keen to explore all the lessons you learnt, going from founder, leader to, a founder operating inside a large company. I'm sure there's so many valuable lessons about how the exit worked and what you would have done differently now in hindsight. And so we're going to get into all of that when we go through 7 questions, because I think that you bring a really interesting story that will help a lot of founders maybe do a little bit of proactive planning about how they might think about exits and what they want to consider in an exit. But before we get there, I do want to ask a question about post 5 years in the previous company. Did you take some time off afterwards? How did you feel? Were you burnt out? Were you still energized? What was the process like, when you finished that role?
I think when I'm finished, I'm really honest that, there was a bit of burnout. There's a huge amount of stress. There was a huge amount of stress for 25 years. There was nonstop stress. And that's going to have an impact on your health and everything, which is why I'd encourage people to really get that right from day one. And there were a huge amount of lessons there, like you say. It's a really interesting journey to go on. But afterwards, if I'm really honest, I was going to retire. That was the deal I had with my wife.
Yep.
And so I had some time sitting on a beach, just, going to health retreats and doing all those sort of things. So I was sort of doing that part, I think, really working on myself. I started studying again, got to sit down and do some sort of online study courses, which I just love learning. I've always loved learning, so I've always been doing courses, but it really was a chance to do some new things during that period. And I was also, I was investing beforehand, but I still sort of did more investing with startups, particularly around the UK scene. And I did a lot of sort of, I guess, some formal advising and some informal mentoring and advising and helping other business owners, because I've always really connected with people who are owners and founders, because as you know, it is a different journey. And for some reason I think I know the reasons, but I really connect with those sort of people. So I was doing a bit of that really for that period of time.
Mate, I kind of really resonate with your experience, right? Like when I exited Red Eye, I feel like it took me almost 2 years to fully get back to the energy level and the baseline that I had, pre-starting Red Eye. It takes that much out of you to grow a company globally and go through all that journey. And like you, I also had the opportunity and have been, investing into early stage tech and mentoring companies. And, even today, right, I had 1, 2, 3 mentoring, one face-to-face and 2 calls with founders helping them. It is that affinity and the ability to, I guess, share some of the lessons we've learned that helps people maybe make some better decisions, or maybe not make as many stupid errors as I did. So what inspired you to start the company? What's the problem you're solving?
I think during that phase we just talked about, I got introduced to a gentleman in Brisbane, who's my hometown, called Andrew Hazelton, and through a family connections actually, and we just started talking in a very informal way because he'd been running his business for about 10 years as an electrical engineering consultancy, boutique developments, and they'd done a huge range of projects, a bit like in our early days when we first started our company in Brisbane. We just did all sorts of industries, all sorts of projects. And he'd been doing that. But I think, he would be the first to say, I would say he's incredibly strong as an engineer and as a talent and creativity and thinking those things, less experience on the business side. And so that's where, we just started talking and sharing. He would bring up problems and it was really rewarding for me because, like yourself, every problem he would come up with, that's something that I'd faced 5 times before.
Yep.
And I'd done it 5 different ways with 5 different results. And some of them worked, some didn't, but a lot of them worked. We had a lot of solutions. So that was really, really, you feel very valuable being able to sort of contribute back in that way in any case. But I think Andrew and I felt a real connection, and he, as his business started to take on more and more complex IP issues and contracts and dealing with complex customers, I kind of didn't really want him to go off track, but he felt like needed more and more effort. So I was getting more involved helping him. And eventually he said, look, can you come in as CEO and come in as a co-founder? And that definitely wasn't on my plan. Wasn't what I was going to do at all. I was on the investment side of the fence. But I really was taken with Andrew's and his team's ability just to solve problems that had just never been solved before. Like they were doing things that hadn't been achieved in certain areas. And I could see that they could deliver. And I know how valuable it is to have a team that can deliver results. So the other part of it was Andrew himself came from a long line of doctors in his family, like multiple generations were all in the medical field, consultants, and his brother's an ER specialist. So he'd started down the track of medical devices and been designing implantable devices and things like that. And so we got strategizing and we realized that we really wanted to help, as many people as we can and have an actual impact on lives, helping people's lives and saving people's lives. And we worked out that this medical device that we're working on was the way to do that and to really focus on people's whose lives were dependent on, for example, the drugs they're taking and making sure that those drugs are right and monitoring them and getting feedback as quickly as they can. So like our primary use case is actually for people with bipolar disease that are, they're suicidal. They're 40 times as likely as the general population to commit suicide, for example. And if they can get the right drugs at the right level consistently, it's shown that can help stabilize those people's lives. But if they're wrong, if they're too high, then those drugs can cause toxic damage to the kidneys and other organs, thyroids. And if they're too low because they're being underdosed, then they're at risk of relapsing into depression or a manic episode and suicide. So getting these things right just seemed like a way that we could really help a lot of people in the world. And so that's what we decided to focus on.
So Aurovian, in essence, is a medical device that monitors the concentration or level of a particular drug in a person's body to ensure that it stays within the range that is therapeutic, that delivers the impact, the positive benefit without being too high and therefore going into the toxic range, or too low where it is not beneficial. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And what we're looking at is like certain drugs, you can't create a one size fits all sensor that's going to measure, like when I heard the term lab on a chip as a business strategy, I'm like, yes, great, let's get lab on a chip and then we're going to conquer the world. And then you realize, no, lab on a chip does not work. You need to create a proprietary biosensor for that particular drug and that particular thing you need to measure, which is a lot of work. And so the wearable space, wearable medical devices, not just fitness devices, is, when you look at it, it's a $50 billion industry right now, and it's scheduled to grow to $500 billion in 10 years. So you can see that sort of reflects the value that it must be creating to sort of help people.
Scott, in essence, Aurovian is making precision, personalised medicine a reality. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's precision medicine and it's personalised monitoring. And in fact, we're working with King's College London in the UK, who are one of the leading researchers into psychiatry and bipolar disorder. And so they really like the phrase precision psychiatry because, for example, if we take this one use case, the patients might get tested once every 3 months or 6 months. That's what they're scheduled to do, but they might skip a year. And so those levels could be all over the place and they don't know, whereas we'll be able to give up to the date, to the minute information. And it's going to open up a whole new next generation of treatment because right now they don't really know what's happening within a day in somebody's medication levels. And no doubt they're fluctuating because, depending on how hydrated you are or how you've slept or whether you've had alcohol or caffeine, what other pharmacology you're taking at the same time, all these things are fluctuating your levels. And we see it in our testing, how sensitive it is. And yet this is impacting how people feel and what their lives are. So to be able to provide this precision measurements for people will be, like a total step change. And we're creating customized proprietary biosensor for specific drugs, which is just hard to get. But we're also adding in biomarkers for standard things like you might get on your Fitbit health watches. We've got heart rate, temperature, oxygen, accelerometers. So we get those biomarkers so we can get activities and we can overlay all that information as well as other biomarkers that we're building to the body. And then we can bring them back into sort of a machine learning AI-based system. So then we can start predicting. And if we can then predict when people are going to have issues, then we can help step in and make adjustments before things go wrong.
So Scott, you just answered question number 2 for me pretty well, right? Like, what are the unique insights or the secret sauce or the different approach that you're taking to solve this problem? And how and why is Aurovian doing it better than what's in the market today?
I think in the market where we're standing at and what our approach is actually being a bit different. So there's obviously been quite a gold rush on glucose. And what people have seen there is, I guess, we're kind of second generation in a way. That has absolutely, beyond any doubts, proven how it can impact people's lives with people with type 1 diabetes and tracking, life-threatening situations for them with their insulin. But also type 2.
So you're talking about a CGM there?
A CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, the patches where they put it on the shoulder and you can monitor the glucose level in real time as it's going up, and you eat a sandwich and you can see the impact. So, which is what we're doing, but for drugs and other analytes in the body. So so they're obviously some big ones to hit, but like I was saying before, you can't there's a whole range of other analytes that are really important to know, and particularly therapeutic drugs and knowing what a drug level is. And not everybody can go out and create every single one. So we're specializing in dangerous therapeutic drug levels. And in particular, initially, we're focused on ones from the psychiatric medicine space. Yep. So there's nobody else really doing that. We're going in and we're owning that space. But what we find is each analyte and each sensor that we're adding helps us monitor a wider aspect of the health anyway. So there's crossover. For example, some drugs might be used for this disease, but also other diseases. And so that's opening it up for us. But that's what our device will do. And there's not really one that does the multi-sensors that we're putting onto our patch at the moment. But I think you sort of touched very lightly then on the process, and where we're different is, as a startup, we bring all of that speed and the ability to take risk and the innovation and the adaptability that sort of the larger companies can't take. They'll play to their strengths, we'll play to ours. But what I think sets us apart is our culture. And I think that's something that other companies can't replicate very easily. And I saw a study the other day where of 1,000 of the top Fortune 500 companies, of 1,000 of the top executives, all rated culture as a top 3 impact to the adding value to their business. So our culture is something we really focus on getting right. And it's a combination of the ideas and the creativity and looking at the research and taking the ideas and coming up with ideas, but also Andrew's long history of delivering engineering projects brings that engineering structured approach to be able to make those things work and get them working in real practice. And so when you combine those two, I think that's when you get the innovation coming out. They're not just ideas. You're not making anything. You're making really good ideas actually work. So we've built systems and processes so that we can prototype at a really rapid rate and build them and test them and then optimize them and keep going, steamrolling along. So I think that's our approach.
So how long's Aurovian been going for?
Well, we did a rebrand last year, but we've really been focused for the last couple of years. And then Andrew's we were working on some medical devices a couple of years before that. So it's about 4.5 years of working, but Aurovian, we started in November 24.
Okay. So you're in essence 18 months in to the journey.
Yep.
How big's the total addressable market, maybe just in this first area of what is it?
Psychiatric, bipolar and psychiatric drugs. Well, just for one drug that we're doing, lithium, we worked with some market researchers in the UK, and they did a cost offset analysis to the NHS. So the NHS is our primary goal and our primary target, primarily because our expert researchers have worked very closely they work within the NHS at Maudsley Hospital. And they basically worked out that just with that saving alone, we would, like, not benefits, but just savings, just a pure cost saving was 160 million pounds a year, which is roughly 320 million Australian. That's just on this one drug, this one disorder that we can hit up if we put it on the people that are there at the moment. And that's just in the UK.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal opportunity set if you just start with the UK and then can expand into countries like Australia, which I imagine have a similar kind of scope and opportunity, and obviously, going broader to North America. Exciting challenge.
Yeah. Yep.
Love to chat to you now about question number 3 on our 7 questions, which is really a founder-based question. And I'm going to constrain it to Aurovian. And that is, what's one of the hardest decisions or challenges that you've faced in the last 18 months, being back in the founder chair, being back in the CEO chair? And how have you tackled it? And maybe what experience did you bring with you from your previous journey that made it slightly easier to tackle?
I think one of the toughest things for any startup, is probably you might get a similar answer, is limiting scope. Because as entrepreneurs, we're inherently, I believe, believers. We're optimists. We believe we can do it. We believe it can be done. We believe we can do anything. Otherwise, we wouldn't. If you're risk averse and you just thought it was too hard, you wouldn't make the effort and try to do it. So, because the people, entrepreneurs of startups, have this sort of belief that you can do it, you want to do everything, and because we're creative, we come up with all these ideas that are just genuine product improvements and improvements to the market that hasn't been done before, and it can improve things, and we know we could do it. So you've got this drive, and also you're charged as well with looking at the market. You're looking at competitors, you're looking at what's out there. So you're always looking at that. And it's very hard to limit scope and just really keep this disciplined focus on what you're building that is the MVP, and what you need to do to not only get to market, but to hit each milestone on that journey. Because in MedTech, I guess this is what I've learned coming into the MedTech space, that is a 5-year journey to get to market. And it's a 5-year journey of one product sort of in a very linear direction in a way. Whereas coming from the online space, like we would have a sprint, you could have a sprint and you could add new functionality in 2 weeks and it's live, and then you can put it out there, see what the customers think, see if it works. Or even a larger project might be 3 months or even a 6 months for a big initiative. So that's that discipline and that having to keep coming back to limit the scope to what you need to deliver, I think is really one of the toughest decisions for a startup to face.
Mate, I totally agree. And I think one of the attributes of a founder is that optimism. And when a customer sees that optimism and that energy and the progress that, unencumbered early stage companies can make, customers are guilty of saying, oh, could you also do this? Or it'd be great if it could do that. Or we'd love to work with you on this as well. And so the founders often get kind of encouraged or dragged by their customers to increase scope and to, deliver more value, and well-intentioned customers who want to partner with people who get stuff done, right? You know that old saying, if you want something done, give it to a busy person, give it to someone that's competent. And so, I see all the time founders, the scope of the solution becoming bigger because their customers really love working with them, right? And so it does take a disciplined entrepreneur to focus on the milestone in front of them and hit the milestone. So how do you work with a team to keep them focused, keep them laser focused on the problem at hand, the milestone you've got to hit, the customer you've got to hit, the effective allocation of capital? Yeah, really curious to hear how you're juggling that.
I think there's two parts. There is kind of like the broader product design scope and what we want sort of for the final project or product and what we want to have in there. And that's even like adding something in that, we want to have it eventually starts taking time and mind share from people now. So I think what works really well for us is being very clear on what the big milestone is we're going for and keeping everybody focused on that, almost to forget the rest of the other things, and keep everybody focused on what we're delivering. And if it's not in that spec, if it's not in that MVP that we're delivering for that, then we're just not doing any time on it at all, because we're running so fast and it's such a short time frame that there is no room to put anything else in to even consider it. And people really get that, and keeps people really, really focused on that. So as long as you can sort of have that, separate out that sort of long, higher level product plan and keep working on it in the background, that's sort of somewhere like me, that I'm not in the weeds in the lab working away and engineering on things. I can be more, and tying in with Andrew at that higher level, while everybody else is just focused on just delivering that milestone and nothing else comes into play.
Do you feel like the experience you've gained also being an investor has contributed to that focus?
Yeah, I think, and especially if you put your own money on the line, I think you're you kind of, you've got a lot to lose and you've got a lot to focus on. And it's not just money; it's putting your whole life on your line. Like
I totally agree.
Andrew and I will not take wages, for example. Like we're working for free, and if this doesn't work, we don't get paid. And it's not just even the money side. Like you put your whole career on hold. You're giving up doing other things for this. So So there's a huge amount invested, not just financially, in making it work. From an investment side, absolutely. I would see kind of what you see when you're looking on other companies and you see where things might be going wrong or what they could be doing better. It's probably harder to do for yourself because you're kind of like judging your own self. So I could see sort of having a third party feeding back would always be valuable in that to help keep you well sighted. But absolutely, I think understanding, and I guess there's two sort of views of the investment. There's the investment side of, if I'm investing in a startup and you want your money back and how do we get money so quickly. But I've also seen for building a longer term successful business where you need to be a bit more patient and put those things in place takes a little bit of a different approach as well. So yeah, it's definitely helped having that view from that side.
Mate, I think that experience of building a longer term company would serve you really well going into a MedTech device company where the timeframes to get to market, to get approvals, to do all the necessary testing, they're much longer timeframes than, say, a software-focused business.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, I think probably the nature of investments into MedTech has changed a bit because some of the advice could be for us, and has been, like build the tech, get those biosensors working, then sell the tech. And that is the best ROI, actually, if you look at it from that perspective. The best ROI, the best use of capital, build the tech, find somebody, sell it off, get our money, and we're job done.
Yeah.
But actually, I think there's two parts. One, Andrew and I want to build something a bit longer term than that. And also, I think the nature of investments into MedTech has changed a bit, where people want to see that there is a market for this product, and then they want to see revenues and they want to see that proof if you want to have sort of a larger value business down the track. And so that's why we started right from the start. And that's probably where I've brought more of that non-tech founder focus is I've been building out the business plan and how do we sell it. And we've done interviews with the payers for the NHS at both the national and the local level of how much they see the price point for what we're building. We've spoken to psychiatric clinicians and asked them how they see it working. So building out that side is something that probably some other tech startups mightn't think so much, just thinking only on building the product, whereas I'm sort of building more of that, the business development side as well.
I think there's a lot to be said about building businesses in that deep tech, med tech, bio space that actually don't just become IP plays, actually become proper fully fledged businesses that create impact in the community around jobs and economic prosperity. So that truly, generational business that is more than just an IP play that gets sold off to someone else to take it to the next stage and to benefit. And we're seeing more and more investment firms, venture firms and private equity firms popping up in Australia that are willing to support, I think, those deeper technology companies to realize their full potential. It is a bit of a push and pull because unless you get that patient capital, then often the capital providers are constrained and need you to, prove out the product and then exit to a larger pharma company or someone so that they can return capital. So yeah, it's great to see the market maturing, and I really hope that the investment market is supportive of more companies taking a longer term view and building companies, not just products. Let's push on to the next question, which is really a personal question again. And it's that old, I guess, question of thinking about, what is one thing that you know now that you wish you knew when you started the company?
I would say it links a little bit back to that limiting scope, but also knowing what that scope is for different milestones. And once again, with a different industry and the scope, the milestone we would have to got to is, okay, MVP, get to market. Do customers buy this and do they spend the money and proves that it's valuable? for a MedTech device, it's this, as I said, this longer journey of these milestones where you're going through these series of gates that are sort of go, no go decisions from an investment point of view. So, and a progress point of view. So knowing what we had to have in place at various times in those key milestones, like exactly what we had to have working, so that we have the proof points to prove to ourselves that we can invest to the next level or progress, for our partners so that they've got the confidence that we're actually delivering what we're saying we're going to deliver, and potentially also investors. So they know, what, obviously there's different stages, different people who come in for investment, and each growth stage we go through along that journey gives more value to the company and less risk because we're getting along. So probably having a better, clear, exact understanding of all those series of gates and milestones and what we would have to have in place for that is what I would love to know right from day one, because there's always those inefficiencies of, bang, here's exactly what we're going to make and have that in 6 months, boom, job done, as opposed to working it out and trying different things.
Mate, I think that insight is incredibly valuable for any founder, regardless of what stage they're at. The reality is that often, the road only becomes clearer the further you travel down it. So, that old analogy of driving at night and the headlights literally are shining the next section of road only when you get there. And so, while it's great to have a goal of trying to map out the whole journey, I also think you've got to balance that with the necessity to start, to get on the road and to create the situation where you can see around the next corner. Because often you find founders that want to make things so perfect before they start that they delay starting to when there's more competition than there would have otherwise been, for example.
Yeah. And I think once again, coming back to founders, that's I think what defines us as founders is that it's not appetite for risk. It's a comfortableness with risk, comfortable with not knowing what is around the corner and how it will be in the end. And a lot of people aren't comfortable. And I know my partner, Andrew, I've been really impressed that he's very comfortable with those situations. And even at a technical level, he's like, I've got no idea how this will work in the end. I don't know how it's going to work, but I know I can work out how to make it work. And then he'll go and proceed to do it over a long period of time and he'll work his way through. And in the end, he gets it working. And that's, I think, why I wanted to be a partner with him, because sort of I really have seen him do it. And it's an amazing, almost a magical ability to do that, I think. Yeah. But I get what you're saying about not knowing around the corner. I'm just saying if I could go back and give an exact spec or an exact, here's how to do it on this date, go for it, we would have saved time.
Oh, I definitely agree. And I think, when I look at Create Financial, which is our accounting practice specifically focused on supporting founders go from idea to legacy, it is really all about helping them see some of the steps in the road that maybe they don't yet have the experience to see, and getting them to prepare for those or take advantage of those actually is incredibly valuable. So let's shift gears and think about what's a pivotal moment or literally a breakthrough that you've had with Aurovian, and how has that changed your trajectory as a business or unlocked new opportunities or introduced new partners? Yeah, what's something that's been really pivotal in your journey so far?
I think, if you term that a pivotal moment, like a single kind of epoch moment, for us, that would surely be like when we got our own proprietary biosensor technology, measuring the analyte and coming out with a key accurate measurement that we then proved was right. That was a key moment, because up to that moment, there's always that doubt, like, can we do this? Will it work? When will we ever get it to work? And once we'd done that, it changed everything across not only our confidence that we could do it and make it work, but a confidence, what's to say, on internal investments, because then we go, we can get there now. All we need to do is just keep optimizing. Yeah. And then build out all the supporting scaffolding around it that we know we need to deliver. But that core bit of proprietary biosensor tech, once we had that working and measuring, then that was the key moment. But I think the things that affect the trajectory for us, the biggest impact has been talent acquisition and bringing people into the company. Because,
cool.
Particularly the early guys in the business had this incredible ability just to work things out. And even if they didn't know chemistry, they would just sit there, do the research, find it, do the basic first principles and build it up from there and get something working in it. Amazing. But each time we've brought in like a real specialist, like somebody with a PhD in biochemistry, well, guess what? They can answer the questions that we hadn't been able to answer. And so every time we've done that, we know it has a step change in what we're able to deliver. And so every time we're able to attract these talented people into the business, it's sort of exciting from two perspectives. One is it's another proof that somebody believes in our vision, and they say, yeah, we want to build something that's going to be out in the real world and it's actually going to be impacting people's lives. And when people buy into that, that's really rewarding for us. So we get excited about that, but then we also get excited that we know that there's going to be another impact to our productivity and our outputs. So that sort of as we keep adding these people, it's sped up our trajectory.
So let's just dig into that, because I think there's some really valuable insights here for people that might be listening. The first thing, the data point around, hey, someone with deep domain and deep industry expertise believes enough in your business, your vision, your team, your opportunity to come and join you. That is a huge data point for founders and for investors, right? And in fact, for customers as well. And so making sure that you highlight those new hires in the market, on LinkedIn, in publications and, newsletters to your customers, I think that's a really powerful and often overlooked tool for building momentum in the market. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's something that probably I don't naturally tend to go towards, that sort of self-promotion. And then I'm sort of used to flying under the radar and just keeping our head down and delivering and then popping up with, hey, look, isn't it amazing what we have here? That's just sort of my natural tendency over the years. But sort of, I guess that's why I'm chatting to you now, as I realize actually a bit of self-promotion is good for the business. So yeah, I can see how that does. And also when people look at business, if they see this history of progress as well as history of people coming on board, not just as an announcement today, but actually now we can see over a series of years, we can see the story coming together. These people haven't just shown up out of nowhere and they're announcing that they can measure, hundreds of analytes in the blood. There's a journey there of credibility. So yeah, I could see how you could do that. And also, I don't know how much LinkedIn plays into this, like seeing who you have at your company, but I certainly found from experience in my last business, good people want to work. Well, one thing is they know other good people, but they want to work with good people.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why I think the best promotion we have is when people come into the business and then they get interviewed and meet these other people. And straight away, they can tell they know what they're doing, they know what they're on about, and they're attracted to that. And then they want to work with people like that. And certainly, as I said, in my last business, we had leaders in the organization that attracted people just by meeting them, because they knew people, technical people knew that they knew what they're on about. And also you could tell they were good managers. So we're sort of replicating that again now. And yeah, that's more, once again, that authenticity of, well, you can read something on LinkedIn, but until you sit down and talk to people, that's when you know it's for real.
So, when you think about advice to other founders and how do you get that balance right between hiring that person that can bring a step change in capability, but also comes at potentially a greater cost and takes a longer time to hire and, might be an intensive process to go and find that person and build trust with them over a period of time before they start. So, the trade-off for founders on, do you go and get someone that's less expensive, less skilled and develop them? Or do you try and find a couple of those really key people? When's the right time to do that? How would you think about which functional areas you might do that in? What's some of your experience or perspective on that?
Well, I mean, you've just asked a chapter of a book on of questions there around the hiring strategy, because it's absolutely, you're right to zero in on it, because it's fundamental to startup's journey. And it's, to me, it's an existential threat question, because the way I look at it is you hire the wrong people, there is such a huge impact on the business, because not just the financial impact, there's the time and resources in dealing with that person if they don't work out, and or dealing with the problems that they create, or their damage to other staff. So we've seen firsthand how important that is. So it's something that we take a long time to hire people. I mean, it sounds bad for a startup. We want to say a long time. We go through a lot of processes. We don't just do one interview. There might be 3 or 4 interviews with different people at different times. People show up on different days in different ways, and you get an insight. They'll be interviewed by people in the company to see if they want to work. It's a two-way relationship. It's not just trying to attract them. So we have quite an extensive process and background checks and all sorts of things. We do psychographic behavioral testing, and then we'll feed that back into questions and test it. Does it match up with what they're saying? So I think once again sort of that experience of we've had things go wrong. And so trying to avoid that is a really important thing that we apply now. But as well, that trade-off, do we get somebody that's a bit cheaper because it's less money, or a bit better? I mean, my big picture position on that, and what I've seen from the past over the years from the technology and developers, is I would hire the best developer and nobody else if that's what it cost. Because it wasn't just, I found like a really top developer versus even a medium developer. It wasn't just that they were 10 times better, and it wasn't even that they were 100 times better. For me, it's exponentially more, because they could do things not faster. They could do things the other people just couldn't actually do and couldn't achieve, and they could do them properly. And to have something architected and engineered the right way, like I was saying before, right at the start of the conversation, because, we've built systems in the past. I've built systems that were running 20 years later in a site, and nobody even touches it. No, they touch it. They reboot it once a day and it's still running. Or we had software that ends up, through legacy, because people are so dependent on them that they're running 10, 15, 20 years later, and you can't change that code. It's a whole thing. So having people that can actually create that level of quality is absolutely worth paying the money. But, and we try sometimes to supplement, like I think we're in a global market, and having people remotely coming in from different places can provide a different price point. So we try to make that work, but it is difficult. Like having everybody in one office, seeing and having the energy and being able to sort out an issue with a 2-minute conversation can take 2 days to 2 weeks of back and forthing and having problems online. So it's a trade-off that we're trying to explore. How do we get that value adding bit right with supplementing these non-core bits with less expensive resourcing?
Mate, it's a huge trade-off, and I think something every founder needs to grapple with. Do they do the cheaper, developing team member, or do they do the experienced developed team member? And how many of each can you have in the business and keep the momentum going, and maximize your runway as well? So definitely something that can be catalytic in terms of propelling the business forward if you get that balance right. Scott, you've got so much energy, right? You're a second-time founder, and you can see and hear the passion in your voice for the problem you're solving, the team you're working with, and the way you're solving it, right? So what is it you do to sustain your energy, to manage your mindset, and to make sure you're still investing enough time at home while you're building company number 2?
Well, I think, once again, you touched on it before, like when you exited your business, and you felt what I felt. Like I couldn't even walk into my office for 6 months. I didn't sit at my desk. I was, and that is a pure natural, I think, I think it's a naturally, you've had this fallen over the finishing line in a way and you've left your business. But, 25 years of extreme stress, like you probably with your business, I was traveling pretty much every week internationally. I was away from home for long periods of time. There's a huge impact to your routine. You try to get a healthy routine happening and it's out the door. You can't get to the gym at the same time every day. You can't eat because you're out like whining and dining client. Yeah, and the jet lag, certainly coming from Australia and doing business. Like a funny story about that is I got to the point where I was away. We had a young son and my wife came to me. She said, look, you're away. We calculated I was away for 7 months of the last 12 months traveling. So how am I supposed to do it? I said, well, Europe's the future. We've got to nail it over there. Let's move over there and I won't have to travel as much. What I didn't realize, I got to Europe and England. Guess what? Everywhere is like a short flight away. So that's how I was traveling every week. And so I learned that, the stress and it's not just stress, the whole impact on your health affects your energy and it affects the whole business. And I think as a founder and as a leader, you sometimes forget how much you impact other people with your energy. And if you're in there either stressed out and yelling and carrying on, that propagates to other people. And if you're not feeling well and you're not bringing the energy, then that sort of brings people down. So I think absolutely for founders, you've got to make that time and invest in yourself and keeping yourself healthy. And so I invest a lot of effort to try and get that balance right, across eating and exercising and time with the family and relationships, and all of that is something that is a constant. I don't know if the word battle, but a constant. I've got to keep coming back to getting it right because I know the negative impacts of not getting it right. So I'm determined to do this in a balanced way this time, and not hurt myself.
So, I've lived exactly that journey, right? And I now think about, what are the trade-offs I make and how should I feel about them? Because I still don't get it perfect, right? Like I get excited and double down on something and I'll work 8 or 9 hours and then go, oh, I'm exhausted and I'm too tired to go for a run. Or I'll allow myself to, work really hard and then be too exhausted to make a nice meal. So I'll end up eating something simple. I think as founders, how should we think about, is it okay to exercise in the middle of the day? Is it okay to take time out of work, or should you go to the kids' event at school, or should you prioritize date night instead of traveling every week? What's some of your thoughts on those things?
I think you've just got to build that routine and build the schedule that it's just in there. You talk about date night. If you leave it to the guy to come up with the idea that, let's go to a date night, it's just not going to happen. You're stressed about trying to pay the bills or this amazing opportunity. So scheduling stuff in, scheduling in the right time to be at the gym and I think it's just really understanding the negative impacts, like you're getting your food and your nutrition and your health wrong. Really is the motivator to get it right. And when it comes to, should I be at my kid's event to watch him play water polo? Yeah, I was there last night and I saw him play really well. Awesome. And it's hugely motivating for me and energizing. And, I know, this might be a bit personal, but my dad, he was a workaholic. He was away working. That was the one thing I wanted. I wanted him there. I wanted him just to see me. So I didn't want to make that mistake. And even when I was traveling, like we said, there were times I had to be away, but if I could be there, I would be there. And I think you get that back in dividends in your relationships. So, and then
I love it, Scott. Hey, thanks.
Quiet.
Thanks so much for sharing, so many insights and, both business and personal insights. Having a second-time founder on the podcast is really valuable because you bring like that beginning to exit experience. And now you're taking those lessons learned into the next episode. So, Aurovian is a really exciting company solving a really important problem. Precision, personalised medicine in a space where the implications of getting the dose wrong or the concentration wrong can be life-threatening. And so I'm excited to see what you guys do. What is next for you guys, and how can people support your journey?
Well, I think we've got our plans and we've got our map and we've got our journey we're on, and I think we're kind of just going ahead and executing that. I think what I can then see is I know there'll be bigger deals coming and more complex deals, and whether we're negotiating national supply agreements with the NHS, hopefully, but that's where I can see we're going to end up, or strategic deals with strategic corporates or other large MedTech companies and doing distribution deals. We're going to have more complex deals that are MedTech and health industry specific. So I think if we could meet people that have that executive level experience, that have done those types of deals, that can just be another sort of seat at our table to just help get those big calls right and those big, more complex deals, I think would be really valuable. Because I know once again in my past, I didn't do it all myself. I had people that could introduce me to the right people at the right time, and the fact that they knew them and then could vouch for me and get me in the front door and had an impact. And then also these can be quite complex deals. So having people that have done it before and can provide some sort of valuable input, I think would be really nice to meet people like that.
Mate, I would love to hear of some of the people listening to this podcast reaching out and trying to attract you guys to come and deliver the value you're delivering back in Australia. I think you'd provide enormous value to our community as well, right? Like, I personally have lost a friend who had bipolar disease and unfortunately committed suicide. And so it is near and dear to my heart. And I think
I'm sorry to hear
if solutions like yours were around, maybe that wouldn't have happened. So, mate, thank you for being on 7 Questions and for sharing your story. Before you go, it's time for a lightning round. So you have to answer these one-word questions really quickly. How does that sound?
Yep, sounds good. Let's go for it.
Okay, you ready? Coffee or tea?
Coffee. I'm a coffee man.
Excellent. Morning or night?
Morning. Let's get going.
Excellent. Now, you're not in Brisbane anymore, but beaches or mountains?
I'm both. Why not? And in Brisbane, Gold Coast, you can. You've got the mountains behind and the beach right there. So do it.
Yeah, I'm both a beaches and mountains guy, right? So I get it. Books or podcasts?
Books. Traditionally on books, but I'm getting into the audible listening and at the right times. That's really helpful.
Fantastic. Is there anything you're listening to right now that is inspiring you as a founder or reading right now?
Yeah, an actual audible book called Dose, which covers the chemical. So I think it's like hacking those chemicals in your body. But it's not actually hacking. It's dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. And it's actually, the whole premise is that all those chemicals were built for survival and they're incredibly powerful. So if we're using them the wrong way by like getting these little stimulations on our phones, but actually using them the right way is incredibly powerful. So yeah, I'm finding that really interesting and useful at the moment.
Cool. I am going to check out Dose. Do you prefer working at home or in the office?
Well, I like to be in the office with everybody because, as I said, you can just like pick up the vibe. You can go for a coffee with people. You hear what's going on. Like at the moment, I'm remotely in London, so I have to work remotely from my home office. But when I'm over there, and I'm coming over to Australia in a couple of weeks to sit with there 5 weeks in the office with the team and feel a part of it. And I learn so much about what's going on. I find that so valuable.
Fantastic. Hey, when you're over here for 5 weeks, if anyone wanted to catch up with you, Would they be okay to reach out on LinkedIn or something?
Yeah, please. I mean, I'm there for 5 weeks, so love to catch up with anybody in Australia. Actually, we had a rule: just jump on a plane and go see people. So anywhere in Australia, we're happy to meet up.
Excellent. And I'll put some contact details in the show notes as well. Okay, question number 6, gym or cardio?
Well, gym, I love the weights, but I've started park run because all my friends do it, and I've avoided running my whole life, and now I'm like, man, it's fantastic. So yeah, actually, once again, it's both. I really enjoy both.
Mate, you're on the fence. So last question, legacy or lifestyle?
Well, you're going to hate me for saying this, but I say legacy, but if you can get a bit of lifestyle to get the balance right, why not? That's what I say.
Yeah. Awesome, Scott. Scott, you've been great to chat with. I'm super excited to see what Aurovian is doing, and I can't wait to follow your progress. Look forward to catching up with you when you get to Australia. Mate, thanks so much for being on 7 Questions.
Well, thanks for having me, Wayne. I really appreciate the opportunity to be the first non-stable company in there. So great chance to have a chat. I really enjoyed it as well.
Thanks for listening to this episode of 7 Questions. If you'd like to learn more about the founders, you can get a link to the full show notes in the description below. Have a great day. We look forward to you joining us on the next episode.